Great White Buffalo podcast with Ben Mayfield.
Actually just hits it, and it's not super. It's still scary to be shot at. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little harder than you think.
And that's the jump into Grenada. There's a whole lot that went on before the jump that you could spend hours on. The confusion, the chaos, because this was the first time the military had an operation with joint services, and it did not go well. The Army not communicating to the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, the SEALs. There were a lot of people involved, but at this point, we really didn't have a common headquarters to control us. So it was really, really difficult to get things done and to communicate, and that was a lesson learned from Grenada. So on the way down in the flight, going down there, we were told, okay, we're not going to jump. You're going to air land. And then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, you might get the word, okay, you're going to jump. And then, it goes back and forth because the information just kept changing. Mm-hmm. So that was very, very confusing. But we ended up, the formation of the airplanes going in changed drastically because you load an airplane based upon where you want people to be on the ground when they jump. So there's certain people at certain parts of the airfield. So you front load the airplane with X amount of people that do a certain job, and then after them is going to jump be somebody else. So each airplane is loaded like that. So when they get on the airfield, they're close to who they need to be. But in this situation, that totally didn't happen. The first three aircrafts just turned around because they were receiving too much gunfire. And so the third aircraft ended up becoming the first aircraft, which was my aircraft, to jump. And then...
Oh, so you're the first ones to actually hit the ground.
I believe our aircraft was the first one to jump. Aircrafts 3, 4, 5, and 6 all came.
Which goes back to Ranger School, which says, hey, when everything messes up and it's super stressful, are you going to have that leadership skill to continue the mission? I mean, is it not right? I mean, because
that's a nice tie-in.
Because if you were to land there and go, well, the first three planes didn't land, so we're going back up. It's like, well, no, you don't get to choose that.
Well, and up to this point, we're okay. So 83, I'm what, 20, 18, 19, 20. I'm 20, and none of us have been shot at before,
Yeah.
And so we don't know what it's like. We don't know what we're getting ourselves into. The information we've gotten at that point has been pretty sparse. So, and we've gone on a lot of, quote unquote missions, and they're not real. They're just training, but they try to hype you up for them. So some of us, maybe in the back of our mind, we're thinking, yeah, this is a big drill. We're really not going. We're going to jump out and we're going to be at Fort Stewart, probably someplace, That was not the case. I mean, when we jumped out, you could see the green tracers. Americans fire with red tracers, and the Soviet Union countries, they fire with green tracers. So you could see the green tracers coming at you, and that's the first, oh yeah, this is real.
I'll say one bad word. That's an oh shit moment.
Yeah, that's when you realize, okay, this is happening.
Yeah.
And then for me personally, I get on the ground, and first of all, luckily to get on the ground alive and not be hurt and have all my stuff.
Yeah.
But then I look around and we're not seeing anybody because the other airplanes didn't jump, And so you kind of, I was very nervous, linked up with a buddy of mine who was a higher position than me. And we were like, where's everybody else? I don't know. And then all of a sudden we looked, and you could look down the airfield, and then you could see the planes had turned and they were coming back. So we knew they were coming back.
Just to make another round.
Making another loop, yeah. And they came back, and that's when the majority of everybody else jumped, which was a good thing.
Did y'all have to secure it enough for them?
There was no securing. We weren't big enough at that first pass. There was not enough people to secure. It was more about we were on one side of the airfield. The bad guys were on the other side of the airfield, kind of on a hill, firing at us. And then as soon as they saw the planes coming back in, they started firing at the planes. So we felt like if we fired at them, they wouldn't be able to fire at the planes as much. So we just tried to cover the jumpers coming in by firing at the other side just to keep the fire down. And then once the majority of the guys jumped, then we started going into our plan to take over the airfield.
Man, that's well, thank you for sharing that. I know this is probably bringing up some memories and some emotions.
I just hope my memories are accurate. I don't want to exaggerate them. I like to talk about what I know and what I've seen.
You definitely weren't like in Disneyland in 1983. You were definitely in Grenada, and so after everybody lands, and I'm assuming combat, happened in America. Did y'all have? So you didn't have any like tanks?
Tank. Rangers don't.
Yeah, you're light. You're light armored infantry.
Light, no armor.
Oh, just light infantry. Okay. So, but y'all are able to, I guess, maneuver, flank them, take it out.
Well, it's a whole.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. I mean, the step one was to take over the airfield, because if we can take over the airfield, then we can land more planes with more people.
Right.
So that was our first step, is to take over the airfield. So we had a mission to take over the airfield. Everybody had something to do. One of the ironic things about it is we knew they had put heavy equipment all over the airfield because they did not want planes to land. They knew we were coming. So they put bulldozers and all kinds of heavy equipment on the runway so we couldn't land the planes. So Rangers don't know how to operate heavy equipment, per se. So we took 2 guys from Fort Bragg that were heavy equipment operators, and we requested, and they came with our unit, and their sole mission in life was to move heavy equipment.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Because they're heavy equipment operators. But ironically, if that's the right word, when we got on the airfield, of course, they're not in the right spots. No one knows where they are. We're on the I'm on the north end of the airfield with my platoon, my group, and there's heavy equipment on the airfield, and we start receiving a lot of fire from the other side. But we had a guy in my platoon from South Georgia who grew up on a farm, and he just jumped on the bulldozer, cranked it up, raised the blade, and we started going. So it was kind of funny that we had somebody that knew how to drive a bulldozer.
Yeah, no, it's like, hey man, this is the same one that's on my farm. I got it. It's like, okay, like, oh. And you could use that to hide behind too, because you probably didn't have a whole lot of cover.
We did use it to hide behind because we were receiving fire from. Prior to this point, there were a couple of trucks on my end of the airfield that had brought on. They just drove onto the airfield with troops, and they offloaded the troops, and they vacated the truck on the airfield, and the troops went up in the woods, or up in the, not really woods, but they went up in the hills, Caribbean, so it's not like woods, but they went up to the hills. And so
but left the truck there.
We crossed the airfield and basically took the trucks and used the trucks as cover. And that, to my knowledge, that would have been the first Ranger killed happened at that truck location. I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
In the whole history of the Rangers.
On that operation.
That operation.
I think he was the first one. It was my roommate. His name was Mark Yamani. He was a machine gunner, and he was shooting up the hill. He was behind cover. He was behind the vehicle's tire, but a bullet had come in underneath the vehicle and ricocheted and took him out. And I think when Mark lost his life right there, I think to a lot of us, our nerves went from nerves to angry at that point. Yeah. Now it became personal. Up until this point, it was kind of everybody's really edgy, everybody's really nervous. We're all doing our thing, but we're still kind of nervous. But everybody that was around that situation when Mark was killed, and then that word spread, that he was, I think it became more personal, and people became angry at that point. And after that happened is when the bulldozer incident happened, and got behind the bulldozer and kind of went up the hill to fight. And used the bulldozer as cover.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember at that point being angry, not only being angry, but just being, I don't know if revengeful is the word, but wanting to get back.
Yeah.
You know, so you start to take more risk. Up until that point, you really weren't taking a lot of risk. You wouldn't move too far without getting down, and you would really be cautious of what you were doing. But as soon as that happened, it was just like, okay,
we're coming for you.
we're everybody's turned loose now.
Yeah.
And it became a different ball game at that point.
It's almost like they made a mistake. Like, you shouldn't have done that, you know. And then, because if I don't, I could be wrong, but Heartbreak Ridge.